What up, people? Here's what's coming up on Christianity and Capitalism from Holy Smoke, Cigars, and Spirituality.
The way tithing is taught in many of our churches is very, very capitalistic. Remember earlier, I asked you to write supply and demand in the comments? Here's where it comes back up. The way tithing is taught in many of our churches is fear-based supply and demand. The church uses fear of divine judgment to manufacture demand for divine favor. And the church convinces you that only the church can supply the divine favor that you need. So if you want to get this divine favor, you gotta come through the church. So they tell you if you don't give, God is going to curse your finances, divine judgment. But if you want God to bless your finances, divine favor, you need to give at least 10% of your money to the church. It is purely transactional and it's rooted in fear and it prioritizes the institution over the people. Compare that to our jobs. Many of us have the same relationship with our jobs. We stay at the job out of fear that we won't be able to live without the job. So we get exploited on our jobs the same way many of us are exploited by our churches. Now, I'm not saying that tithing is bad. I'm talking about the way tithing is taught.
Now, I'm recording this intro before the election is over, but by the time you see this, we may already have a new president-elect. Parts of this episode are going to speak directly to some of the political challenges that we face. But before we get into that, recently, we recorded an episode called Deconstructing Soul Ties with Ebony Jasmine Harris, aka The Jasmine's Garden, on TikTok and Instagram. Deconstructing Soul Ties is available exclusively in our Patreon account. So here's a sneak peek at the conversation we had about some more harmful theology from Jackie Hill Perry.
I'm gonna get straight to the bullshit. Here we go.
The part of helping people to not listen to false doctrine and false teaching.
Pay attention to when people say false doctrine. Well, who gets to determine what is false? If we say harmful, you to determine what is harmful to you. But when they say false, they determine for you what is false. So they say false doctrine, meaning anything outside of what I teach you.
To be able to discern, the kinds of churches they go through is that I think people have to learn how to suffer well.
What the hell does suffering well even mean, Jackie?
Is she telling us we're supposed to like it? Because I want her to address that as the kink that it is. Your kinkiness is showing.
If you don't tell people what you're talking about, they will put that suffering that you speak of and that you're trying to passive aggressively shame them about, they will take that and put that in whatever context they're in. So if they're in an abusive relationship, hearing you talk about suffering well, maybe I just need to stick around. Or I'm in some other form of harmful situation that I have the power to get out of, that I have the power to seek help for. And then I hear you tell me that I don't love God and I'm abandoning the safety of God because I don't suffer well. Leave me out of it. Because if suffering well looks like what you're doing, baby, you unraveling at the seams and you don't even know it.
Because I really think that's a big part of all of this. When you even look at scripture, like they chose other gods because they were unwilling to wait. They were unwilling to trust. They were unwilling to depend, right? Like, I don't know where to go. Let me go to the psychic. I don't know what to do. Let me trust in the golden calf because Moses is up there too long. Like the neediness drives them to idols versus dependence.
The expression misery loves company. Please stop including us in your self-loathing. I know what she is trying to cope through and she's not doing a good job at it.
And I feel like if we don't learn how to suffer with God, we're going to leave him.
The theology of suffering is a setup for abuse. If somebody is telling you that your relationship to God is connected to how much you are able to suffer, they are setting you up for abuse because they're making your relationship with God abusive. So if your relationship with God is abusive, then you're going to get into abusive relationships with other people.
Because life is hard.
Yeah.
Universally, it doesn't matter. Like, how many people have become atheists because life got too hard and you weren't going to trust them?
Yeah. Suffering is a fact. We go through things in life. But what I've discovered is the people who I've encountered that have suffered have come out on the other side with a level of humility. But it's only the people who have been at war with themselves and suffering that they chose that have come out with a pompous attitude. And it's obvious that she has been in war with herself. And she's in suffering that she chose, because instead of coming out with humility to encourage, she comes out with doctrine to Lord and say, this is how you should make meaning, as opposed to offering people hope when they get to the other side and celebrating their survival. Because suffering well is not a thing, but surviving suffering is. And so what I want to do is, to the people on this platform, if you've gone through suffering, I'm so glad you made it, because honestly, all the suffering I've been through, I did not want to go through. And if I could go back, I would not have gone through. I celebrate the fact that I survived it. And that is where I find my faith and my hope and my joy that I came out on the other side and I'm alive.
I'm not gonna lie, this episode is one of the best we've recorded in a while. If you want to see the entire recording, hit the link in the show notes. You have two options for how to watch it. Number one, you can sign up for a paid subscription to our digital community on Patreon. Or number two, if you don't want to commit to a subscription, you can just purchase the recording a la carte on Patreon. Friendly reminder, if you're listening to this episode on the audio podcast platforms, you have the option to watch this episode on the tfc.virtual YouTube channel. The link is in the show notes to watch this on YouTube. And last but not least, this new maroon Peace and Blue Magic Hair Grease sweatshirt is still flying off the digital shelf. So head over to the Disruptive merch store and pick one up today. That's another way you can support the work that we do here at Holy Smokes in the Faith Community. The link to shop is in the show notes. All right, you know what to do. Pull up a chair, light a stick if you want, and pour a dram if you please, as we deconstruct harmful theology and build beloved community one cigar at a time. Let's get to it.
All right. We're back. We're getting started again. We were a little bit delayed because right before we started this, you know, Pamela always sings songs when I say anything random. So I said, do it. And then she started, what song did you start with? Do it.
It was Kaya.
Yeah. That old ratchet song that unsaved people sing. But the Lord laid on my heart the song that Hezekiah Walker did. And it took me a minute to find the name of the song. Y'all remember the song Make It to the City by Hezekiah Walker and Love Fellowship Crusade Choir, and Bishop Kirby Brown was leading? Somebody gonna know. I know not everybody gonna know, but my 90s choir kids gonna know what I'm talking about, because that was a good time. But yeah, that's why we got started a little bit late. We are talking about Christianity and capitalism. And when you talk about Christianity and capitalism, it's basically a case study in idolatry. I'm trying to tell you. It's a lot. And one of our faves is back. We haven't seen her in a couple of months. She done got a new job and everything, and she's back. Nikki, the anchor, is with us again. We got to show her some love. So, Nikki, real quick before we go further, tell us about this new job you got and how can people connect with you with the work that you're doing? Oh, no, you're muted. Just like the olden days.
Just like the olden days. It's been so long. I've forgotten what to do. I'll catch up quick. So back in the beginning of June, I took a new job with an organization called Baptist Women in Ministry. It's an organization that's about 40 years old. It was birthed out of the division that happened in the Southern Baptist Convention over lots of things. One of the things that they held up was women in ministry. And so it was started by a scrappy group of women who said, we have a voice. And they've begun to grow. And so now they've gone from a group of volunteer women to a group of, we've got an executive director and 3 directors and some part-time employees and a really great board. And so we do things like support and advocacy for women in ministry, primarily in Baptist spaces. So if you are Baptist of any flavor, and I say Baptist-ish of any flavor, and you're a woman and interested in ministry, we are completely welcoming and affirming. And we would love to connect with you if support and advocacy is something that would be good for you. And so my role is Director of Advocating for Women in Ministry. And it just means I get to do a lot of really fun things. So, and I'd love to talk to anybody about it who is interested.
I love to see how much you love what you're doing. Like, it's written all over your face. The excitement, the
It's
joy.
written all over your face. You don't have to say a word. Body roll instantly.
All right.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm having a blast and loving what I'm getting to do right now.
Yes, absolutely. We're glad to see you. Glad to have you back for this conversation. And then we got AT&T, who is with us, gonna give us the one rule of AT&T. Help us out, please.
All right, we have one rule over here at Holy Smokes. The one rule is that we honor each other's lived experiences. We don't uplift theories over what people have actually lived. Healthy debates are welcome, but kindness is key. And in the spirit of Lord Thurston, who is not here, or your ass will get dragged. Amen. Yeah. Amen. And the one rule is rooted in greatest commandment theology. It says your love for God is displayed through how you love your neighbor, which is an extension of how you love yourself. Therefore, you can't fully love God if you don't love your neighbor, and you can't fully love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. Govern yourselves accordingly in Jesus' name. Amen.
Govern yourselves accordingly. That's so old school, church. I love it. You got such an old soul.
That's what I can.
Ain't barely 21 yet. Just
whoa. Not too much. See, you started off with Pamela. Now you done made it all the way over here to me. And I just want to know, what did I do?
That was low. That was real low.
You was talking about me being old, need to go to the bathroom for intermission.
I did that in the pre-show. I didn't do that on the worldwide live internet.
Ooh.
We don't know if this is gonna get released to the public anyway. We gonna see.
Jamie said Reverend Mother. That's what we need to add to Tierney's moniker. Right. AT&T and Reverend Mother, because she is Reverend Mother, okay?
All day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just an old soul. She be sitting around just humming.
I do be humming and rocking, okay?
Same.
And I know why people wanted to be on their porch. I need a porch again, because a porch, a cup of coffee, and a humming and rock will bless your life.
And don't add a rocking chair to it, something that actually rocks when you move.
Patio chairs. So like, they're not the full rocking chairs, but I bought patio chairs that got the rock in them because I need it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Old. Just old. Well, we appreciate you for grounding us with the one rule. That's what guides everything that we do here. That's how we keep these conversations going and keep the community flowing. That was not intentional. I was not trying to make that rhyme. It just came out like that. But here we are. Introductions. Let's go ahead and get into that. We're talking about Christianity and capitalism. So by way of introduction today, do the usual. What are you smoking and drinking, if anything? And then I want to know, because capitalism is such a big topic and it's something that we're like born into, but not necessarily aware of. I wanted to start the conversation right there. Like, at what point in life did you become conscious of the role that capitalism plays in society? And I'll start. I'm not smoking anything. This week I've been having some respiratory issues. I think I got like leftovers from COVID, because ever since I got COVID, my asthma been acting up a whole lot worse. I've been using my inhaler a whole lot. So that, on top of the change in the season, yeah, it hasn't been fun. Y'all pray my strength in the Lord so that these respiratory issues.
But I'm churchy. You want us to pray your strength in the Lord.
Yeah.
I'm old and I'm churchy.
Y'all cut from the same cloth, just different ends. It's just different ends of the same cloth. That's all.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
absolutely. But I am burning some incense tonight. I'm doing High John the Conqueror again. It's the same thing I did on the last episode. Because we're talking about capitalism, I have a strong beverage, little Maker's Mark, neat. All right. Pamela just gagged. Ooh, I'm gonna tell y'all one day about the first time Pamela had Hennessy. Ooh-wee. Ooh-wee.
Can we
Ooh-wee.
make that a Patreon live? Can we not, like, the World Wide Web? Can
You
we
don't want to
not?
tell the whole world?
Nope. No. Because that's one of those moments that I talked about last week where you won't be able to say, I didn't do it. I should have just not done it.
Yeah. Yeah, praise the Lord. We'll come back to that. Patreon live. Just we'll talk about it then. So when did I become conscious of the role capitalism plays in our society? So for me, it goes back to when I went to seminary. Like, and I think that's significant because we're talking about Christianity and capitalism, right? So we're talking about the connection between the two, but we're not just talking about like all of Christianity. The seminary I went to actually made me aware of how capitalism functions and the issues with capitalism within our context. So it was being in a Christian space that helped me to really start to pay attention to how capitalism functions. And I'm going to talk later on about what capitalism is. So we're going to get into that and get into all the nuts and bolts, not everything, but I'm going to do as much as I can. But yeah, so here's the thing. I went to seminary in a mixed space. It was like half black, half white. And it was my white classmates that talked a lot about capitalism. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because like I went to school with like a lot of white liberals. And those of us who have been in white liberal spaces, we know how that kind of goes. A lot of times there's like this air of superiority because like, you know, it's kind of like how white people use the term woke. Like, oh, I'm woke. Like, first of all, you shouldn't even be using that term. It's not yours to use, first of all. But then there was a situation where like, I noticed that some of my white classmates were really judging people based on like capitalism, and they were judging prominent pastors who wore nice clothes. And here I am in seminary as a custom clothier who clothes the people that they're judging. And I'm like, wait a minute. So y'all saying it's bad to wear custom suits? Like, that's how far we going? And it became apparent to me like, oh, y'all approach this like we supposed to take some vow of poverty. And I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not taking a vow of poverty to do ministry if that's what y'all expecting, because I like clothes. I like to look good. I make them. I wear them. It's my personal expression. So if you mad because somebody got on a $500 pair of shoes, I make shoes that cost $500. So like there was this thing where it's like, okay, we do need to address capitalism, but I think some of y'all are being kind of extreme with it. And when I was talking to my man Otis Moss about this, about how like white liberals approach capitalism and economics, he said something so profound. He was like, well, you know, privilege is its own form of profit. I was like, oh. So yeah, shout out to Otis Moss. I'm gonna post or share this just on his behalf, because this is how I felt when he made that statement. It was a very aggressive, quick tongue that came out of me. All right, let's keep it going. Pamela, we haven't heard from you yet. Introduce yourself and tell us when you became conscious.
I am Pamela, the therapist on hiatus, NFL, shattering all stereotypes about first ladies. Amen and ashe. I am drinking Coke Zero, my bestie. And I am burning. I usually set up about 3 incense for the show. That's usually how many I can burn through by the time we get done. So I have some Moon Goddess for those of you who are into scents. Nag Champra is a very good brand. So I have the Gold Gleam, and I don't know the name of this, but it comes in the red pack. So go out to your neighborhood beauty supply store, wherever you have a swap meet, if you have whatever, and find you some incense. They last you all day. And so I'm burning those. And when I was first conscious of capitalism was in my mid-20s when I was in an apartment. I'd gotten out of grad school and I had moved to the east side of Atlanta in a area called Stone Mountain, Lithonia area. And what I noticed was every time I had to re-sign my lease, it was up like $100 from the last time. You know, there weren't any upgrades on the apartment. There wasn't anything that was new done to the grounds or anything like that. But I lived there for about 5 years and the rate of rent increased every single year. And it didn't increase at the same rate every single year. So I started paying attention to the fact that the rent was going up every single year. And then because I did contract work, I had to use my gas because I'm doing community-based mental health, and the price of gas was going up at the same time. And I think what hit me the most outside of my rent was the fact that I'm doing contract work. And because I do that, I can charge for each, piece of the work that I do. But even with me doing all of the things that made me money and helped sustain me, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough because what I budgeted for was the rent that I signed the lease on. So if I signed a lease for $1,100, 3 years later, like I'm still expecting $1,100. My job is still paying me to pay for $1,100. So I think around that time, I was just like, something's wrong with the system because I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. And I am still paycheck to paycheck. So yeah, that's when it came into my awareness when I really had the time to like actually look like, wait a minute, my rent has gone up $300 and I've been here for 2 years. But why is that?
That's so real. Like when you're doing the stuff that you're supposed to do and yet you still can't afford to live. That's so real. And that's where a lot of people are. We working 40 hours a week and still can't afford basic necessities. Like, what is that about? Yeah. Nikki, talk to us. When did you become conscious of capitalism?
So I've been thinking about this. And I know you said conscious, but I'm going to make one comment that growing up, I learned that money was a big deal. That you could act in certain ways to get it, and you had to know how to get it from someone. And I just knew that it was a really important and a big deal, and there was never enough of it. So that framed everything for me. And I have a lot of emotions about this because as I'm contemplating the question, I'm realizing that I was in my late 30s and I was listening to a sermon delivered at McAfee Chapel when I was working there, a Trey Lyon. And he made a comment. Do you remember? Were you there, Christian? Do you know what sermon I'm talking about?
I think I remember.
So
yeah, go, because I remember Trey said something like really, really profound and impactful. Yeah, but I don't remember what it was now.
And this is probably, I've done a lot of processing on this, but this is probably the first time I'm saying it kind of in a live space. But he commented about realizing that the scholarships that he went to school on, as I don't know the connection. I don't know if his parents were missionaries or ministers or if he was just like super Southern Baptist, but he went to school with some Southern Baptist scholarship money. And it was in school where he learned that the reason those scholarships exist are because the Southern Baptists exist, and they exist because they disagreed about slavery and they wanted to keep their slaves.
Boom.
And so he connected the dots for me that as the pastor of a Southern Baptist preacher, I went to school and had got some money from, I don't know, but it was essentially from the Southern Baptist Convention, and then putting together where that money came from. I still don't know what to do with all of that, but that's when I became so very aware of how insidious capitalism was and how it draws all of us into complicity with it, whether we want to be there or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So first this. So like, is insidious a dollar jar word, or am I tripping?
Oh, you're doing a lot today. You're doing a lot. Okay.
Pamela said
Insidious
yes.
dichotomy.
I'm going to say insidious. The only reason why I say insidious is a dollar jar word is because Insidious is the name of a horror movie that has three parts. So where people might equate it to that, they might make the cultural reference without understanding what the real definition is. That's the only reason why I'm saying it's a dollar jar word. That's it.
I can take my licks.
3 movies with the title of Insidious. Yeah, that's it. That's all.
Yeah, so insidious, like it creeps in, it gets into all the crevices, and it's there before you know it. It is sneaky.
Subtle. Yes.
It is a part of everything, so you don't know that you're in it.
Yes. So to that same point, Nikki, before we go to tyranny, I went to a Black church leadership conference as a kid. We would meet annually, either in Glorieta, New Mexico, or in Ridgecrest, North Carolina.
Yep.
And the Black church leadership conference that I attended was sponsored by the Southern Baptist Convention.
Yeah.
So when I grew up and came to understand not only the history of the Southern Baptist Convention, but the current stance of the Southern Baptist Convention, I was like, how are we going to stuff sponsored by the people or the organization that was created to keep us enslaved?
Right.
Why are we learning like church leadership from them? Why are we allowing them to frame? Yes.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
And also because there's still a sector of Black members and leaders in power who believe white is right.
Mm-hmm.
So just like a lot of times when things happen in pop culture and things happen in the news, the first thing that you'll find a lot of people in the comments doing is say, well, they don't hold so-and-so to a certain standard and they don't hold it, because we are still measuring right by what's done to white people. So we still feel like white is right. So even when we do it subconsciously, we measure it by what the standard is by whiteness, even when we don't mean to. So I think that also plays a part into it.
Sure.
One of my favorite sayings is, we swear that white folks' ice is colder. We swear white folks' ice is colder. Nikki, if you ever want to get some brownie points, tell a Black person, like, look, our ice is not colder. I promise you.
Okay. Is he getting me in trouble?
Let me tell you something. The grass is greener where you water it, where you nurture it, where you take care of it. The ice is colder where the refrigerator is colder, where the refrigerator is in a place that is conducive to keep ice cold. Like it's gonna be good wherever you nurture it. That's my message in these instances where we start comparing. We look at ourselves and then we say, well, they're not doing that to them. It's like, but it's gonna be green if you nurture it where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyranny, what about you, Reverend Mother? Introduce yourself. When did you become a conscious of capitalism?
Yes. Tyranny, AT&T, Reverend Mother, all the things. So I am drinking water, and a beverage I made up. So, like when you go to American Deli and you get the peach drink and you get the lemonade and then you mix them together and you put tequila in it, whatever that's called, that's what I'm drinking. And so I got that going on. And then I am burning a sandalwood incense. That has been one of my favorite transition fragrances. So like Georgia don't know if it wanted to be summer or fall or whatever it got going on. So sandalwood is a nice in between scent that I have been burning. And so when I think about my introduction to capitalism, so my introduction to capitalism was in seminary, and it was from a lived experience point because that was my first time being an adult, and I didn't have a full-time job when I was in seminary, so I was poor, okay? Like I didn't have any money. And so thinking about and trying to wrestle with this call that I felt like I had and the ways that God called me to go to seminary. But it's like, why you call me to go to seminary if it don't come with a stipend? Like, how am I supposed to pay my rent? Like, how am I supposed to buy groceries? How am I supposed to do all of these things? And so, having part-time jobs and doing all of those different types of things. But it was my first time ever having to consider that. So, when I was growing up, my mama used to talk about certain stuff was or wasn't in the budget, but that didn't really affect my life. Like it was always frivolous stuff that was or wasn't in the budget. And so it was like things that were, stuff that didn't really matter. And so she would be talking about that is or that isn't in the budget. And then when I was in undergrad, I was still very taken care of by my parents. And then when I got out of undergrad, I got married. So I still wasn't paying rent. For real. And so like once I was in seminary, I was like, oh, I gotta buy my like own gas and groceries and like real adult things. Oh my goodness, what am I supposed to do with all of this? Like I have to like budget. I just want to get my nails and my hair done and go talk about Jesus. Like I don't understand.
I want to get my hair and my nails done, baby, and go talk about Jesus.
Baby, if you look up Spoiled in Christ, Tierney's picture is next to it. Spoiled child of God.
And so I was having to contend with these realities. And I was like, I don't like this. I don't like it. And so, that was my first real introduction into what that looks like and what that meant. And of course, as life and time has gone on, my experience with it has been different. But that was definitely my introduction.
Yo, that is hilarious.
I love it.
Me.
Her parents deserve a round of applause. Can we give Lynn and Tierney's dad a round of applause? Because this has entertained me. Okay. Thank you for taking care of your child.
Shout out to them.
Shout out to your parents. That baby said, I need my nails done. Okay. I need to figure this out.
I want
to work something out.
I want to live a life where I get my hair and my nails done and talk about Jesus.
And this ain't adding up. I don't want to talk about Jesus with my work undone. Okay, no. I need my work to be done before I go out and talk about Jesus.
I need to look right when I talk about Jesus.
Together, let y'all know the Lord takes care of you. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you the Lord is taking care of you if I don't look taken care of. I mean,
Amen. Corner somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to have it together. All right. So let's keep it going. You know what time it is.
Reaching for the stars.
Reaching for the stars. All right, y'all. So today for Reaching for the Stars, we're sticking to this Christianity and capitalism topic. And this is going to be a little bit educational. You may or may not know about this movement called the Theo Bros. And it's tied to an episode that we did recently about Christian nationalism. If you haven't seen the episode we did called Bad Faith, The Rise of Christian Nationalism, go check that out. It's on YouTube right now. Danielle Thomas, the Unfit Christian, was our guest on that show. It was a really, really informative and fun show. Well, we talked a little bit about how Christian nationalism has really risen in prominence and popularity in the country. in very insidious ways. Like it was upon us before we realized it. So the Theo Bros are like an extension of that, and it definitely ties in with this connection of Christianity and capitalism. Now, this is a 5-minute video. It's educational. It's going to be worth the whole 5 minutes. It was produced by Mother Jones Magazine. So if you want to go look into Mother Jones, it's a great resource. It is a newsroom. No, that's something else. I'm thinking about something else. Mother Jones, go check them out. But this is a video from Mother Jones Magazine about the Theo Bros, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it.
Yes, there are Christian nationalist influencers. Let me introduce you to the Theo Bros.
We can't force people to have faith in Christ, but we can, as a people, order that.
I'd rather have a Christian monarchy than our current state of affairs.
We could argue that now is the time to arms again.
So the Theo Bros are a group of mostly millennial Christian pastors and influencers. Many of them, most of them even, will tell you that they are Christian nationalists.
We are indeed Christian nationalists.
They're purposely extreme and extremely online, so they're obviously connected to J.D. Vance.
There's this group called the Rockbridge Network. J.D. Vance was a founder. Peter Thiel is involved, and also this guy Chris Buskirk.
And then, of course, Chris Buskirk, a great friend of mine,
who was involved in American Reformer, which is kind of the unofficial magazine of the Theo Bros. I think it's important to say that not all of them hold every belief. That being said, I think some common beliefs that I have encountered are that we should be repealing the 19th Amendment. They'll talk about the dead Constitution and how the 10 Commandments should take its place.
I want a Christian nation more than a republic.
I think all 10 Commandments should be legislated and enforced.
Some of them talk about prison reform, and by prison reform, they mean public flogging instead of prison. Some of them talk about executing heretics. Involved in that is also execution of gay people.
But it's not just online. They're doing conferences, writing books, doing events.
One of the things that's been interesting lately is that some of their events have started to overlap with some events of more kind of mainstream politicians. And I think probably the most prominent example was the National Conservatism Conference, where you had Doug Wilson speaking at this conference.
And of course, coming to the high treachery, you were all no doubt anticipating I would address, make all our teens woke by means of chemtrails.
And you had J.D. Vance speaking there.
America is a nation. It is a group of people with a common history and a common future.
Now, if Theo Bros are kind of the millennial posters of the Christian nationalist movement, Doug Wilson is sort of like the boomer who passed the torch.
He has sort of built his own little Christian fiefdom in Moscow, Idaho. He has this church. He has, helped to start a school, like a K through 12 school there. He has a college there, New St. Andrews College, that he's helped to found as well.
Now, it's this community in Idaho that he's built that Theo Bros see as sort of a blueprint for what a Christian America could and should look like.
Creating a legal framework in which people could create intentional communities where they could build something new would be a good idea to allow people to experiment. Just
like Doug Wilson, so too do many of the other Theo Bros want to do this in various places in the United States.
But he's also built this other type of blueprint for Christian nationalist influencing.
He was telling me about how he has his kids helping him produce these very slick videos.
The left is the cancer and Trump is the chemo.
He's taking some of these ideas. He's really making them for a broader audience and for a younger audience.
Now, at this point, you might ask, where are all the women?
If you asked some of these guys where the women were, they would say they're at home, like taking care of the kids.
Godly women want to feed their men. Godly women are designed to make the sandwiches. When women were granted the right to vote, we were so muddled, we thought we were giving the franchise to women when we were in fact taking it away from families.
And just for the record, I think the 19th Amendment should be repealed. I think that because, first and foremost, because I'm a Christian. If we had a Christian nation and women could vote, then within 50 years, we would no longer have a Christian nation.
They don't think that women should be in leadership roles. They don't think that women should be out there voicing their opinions.
As we already know, Vance holds very particular views on gender.
If you bought into an idea that it's liberating to leave an 8-week-old baby to go work 90 hours a week at Goldman Sachs, you've been had. You have women who think that truly the liberationist path is to spend 90 hours a week working in a cubicle at McKinsey instead of starting a family and having children. To me, what it is sort of a value system to replace the fact that they're all fundamentally atheist or agnostic. The people who are most deranged and most psychotic are people who don't have kids.
It's clear that they see J.D. Vance as someone who will help further their vision of a country that puts Christianity above all else.
I think these guys saw one of their collaborators in the White House. It would be proof to them that all of the effort that they have made, all of the time and money that has been invested, that it was all paying off.
There's so much more to this story, including connections to Project 2025, more about the web of J.D. Vance and Theo Bros that I can't even dream of touching on in a video like this. So go read Kira Butler's full piece at motherjones.com.
All right, y'all. So I wanna first acknowledge that I'm sure that's troubling. I mean, it was troubling when I first saw it. And I don't show this stuff like to rage bait. I want us to be aware. Like, these people are very closely connected to the potential vice president of the United States. Like, the current Republican candidate for vice president of the United States is closely connected to a bunch of Christian nationalists who think women should be at home making sandwiches and that everybody should be under Christian rule, like a Christian monarchy. I remember I made a video and I said something about, like, you know, Christian nationalists want a Christian monarchy where Trump is the king. And I remember when I said it and I looked at myself in the video saying it, and I was like, I wonder how many people heard me say that and was thinking to themselves, Christians just be so extra. That ain't really what it is. Because, like, some people think I'm an alarmist. And it's like, no, this shit is real. It's in our face.
Bishop, what's an alarmist?
Someone who just tries to, like, drum up fear and stoke fear to get people to make irrational decisions. Right. And that's not who I am. I just want us to be aware, because one of the things I'm gonna point out is the whole they want to, what was it? Not persecute, but execute heretics.
Right.
I mean, that is textbook what I am. And they include in that Q plus people. And these are the people who identify as Christians, who are trying to get as much power as they possibly can by connecting themselves to capitalistic politics. So I think it's just really important to, like, name that. I'm not trying to scare people. I just really want us to be aware as a people, because we out here trying to live this life. And, like, this is what's happening. This is how people are organizing against the lives that we're trying to live. So I just think that's important to name. But, like, beyond that, the ladies are obviously pissed. I would love to hear what y'all have to say. What are your thoughts? Nobody wants to go first.
I want Nikki to go first. And Nikki, if I can tell you why I want you to go first, it's because of what I said in the pre-show with how I know that you are operating in your new space, and there's a certain amount of trust I have in what I know of you as a person, as a white woman, that I can give you the benefit of the doubt on stuff. That doesn't mean that you won't ever be wrong or whatever, but there's a certain benefit of the doubt I could give you. And because all of this was white, I would love to hear from you about what you think about your fellow white men, please, if you don't mind.
No, I don't. My first response, you'll see I'm got tears, is anger. I just that's my gut reaction to the video. And I'll be honest, I didn't watch it before just now. That's my first time seeing it. And so there's this I feel very overwhelmed by the anger that I feel at watching it, because it triggers so many things. And and what's behind that, right, is fear, right? I'm just so very aware of what they are encouraging, what they are saying is the way things should be. Means none of us are doing what we're doing right now.
Right.
And I've got girls coming up. And I think about, so that's where I go first. There's anger, and then behind that, there's fear, right? And then the fear trips over into, that's a shit ton of power. Like there's this like kind of overwhelming awareness, right? That the connections that these people have, and so the access to both power and money, makes their reality very plausible. Right. It's doable. If you have power and you have money, you can make anything happen that you want to happen. And they have both of those things. Which means in a capitalist society, the way is opened for you. The fact that they're white increases the anger, doesn't surprise me. Makes me even more sad. So these are all the initial reactions. And then the last one is just like the overwhelmingness of it, that it feels like that movement is a train that's headed down the tracks, and we're kind of in a moment. What's going to happen? Where is it going to land? Is it going to come into the station, or are we going to send it off a cliff? Dear God, please let's send it off a cliff. So much in my feet. So much. So this is, I'll end with this. So much in my feelings about anger and fear, because all of that is very real. But I think that when I can step back, I know there will be things that will bring hope. I just don't know what they are. And then that's when I shut up and I listen to you guys. And if you tell me something to do, I do it. So that's what I got. That's what I got.
Yeah, I feel you on that.
I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can piggyback off of Nikki, I appreciate your awareness of what's happening and the potential of what's happening. What I want to say to the Black people is, although there are Black ministers absent from that video, I need you to not think that your Black pastors don't have the same line of thinking when it comes to traditional living, when it comes to the woman's place in the house, or the woman's role in the relationship, or how we need to go back to all of this traditional patriarchy. Just because they're not in the video, I need y'all not to think that they don't have these same thoughts, because my thought when I saw it was, damn, the Black church is always late, but we always show up. So this video might be full of white men, but please believe Black pastors on their way. Please believe there are Black pastors that are already talking like this. They already believe this. They already support this line of thinking. They just don't have the money and the platform and the support behind them to be as out in front as some of these other people. So I need, for when we watch this as Black church, I need us not to spectate as if this can't happen to us, as if this rhetoric doesn't happen in our churches and in our Black church circle, because our pastors believe the same thing. So we're not exempt from this. These people just have more money to create compounds and do all of it. That's all, because we're gonna catch up. We there. We just need to catch up in terms of finances. That's all.
Yo, you just said a whole word, and LG put in the comments people like Jackie L. Perry, Tim Ross, Priscilla Schreier, right? The Forge movie, all of that is a part of this whole Christian nationalist movement. And I had some people who wondered why I amplified the Tony Evans story when he stepped down. Like, yo, Tony Evans speaks at these conferences. Like, these people in this video that we just watched, Tony Evans is one of the Black preachers that they bring into their spaces. Priscilla Schreier is his daughter. The Forge, all of these movies that Black Christians be like, oh, it was so good, it was so encouraging. It's reinforcing fundamentalist indoctrination. When Nikki talked earlier about how insidious it is, that's exactly what she was talking about. You're swimming in it before you even realize it. And I think the frustrating thing for me is people look at me crazy when I point it out. Like, here you go again. Like, no, this shit is really happening in real time right now. So yeah, like, we ain't that far behind. Especially with Black men feeling like we don't have the same control that we once had over our community. Yeah, there's going to be a backlash today. I mean, there's already a backlash today. Now, tyranny, if you can work through what your face is showing me right now, I would love to hear what you got to say, because it's written all over your face.
Yes. So Bell Hooks said we live in a white supremacist, imperialist, heteropatriarchal capitalism. That is the reality that we currently live under. And that video is an exemplar of that reality. And for me, there were so many different things that came up as I was watching the video. And one of them is just the ways that capitalism has brainwashed us to believe that the goal was ever to work a 90-hour week. That was never anybody. That is not life-giving in any way. How is working a 90-hour week beneficial to anyone? That is not the will of God for anybody's life. Right? And how dare you say that women and birthing people who do not want to have children are deranged and psychotic, when we haven't done the work to study what actually happens to women's bodies throughout the process of conceiving, carrying, and birthing children, right? We don't actually study what happens to women's bodies because you believe that you should repeal the 19th Amendment, right? We don't talk about the fourth trimester and the ways in which that can impact your psychology and the way you actually process information. And by giving birth to a child, you could never be the same in all of these different ways because we don't even give the time and attention to pay attention and study these things because women are some abnormal version of men, and whatever happens to y'all has to obviously be some version of what's happening to us, right? So there's so many things happening in the video, and it's just the way that white supremacist capitalism in Christianity has brainwashed all of us to believe that this version of reality is the version of reality that we should be living in, and how we are continuing to elect politicians and go with the realities that we live in to continue to see these things progress. And so I have so many thoughts about capitalism and late stage capitalism and white supremacist capitalism in blackface, and how all of those things are intertwined. And the end goal or the end result is that none of us are going to be well, right? This does not lead to the flourishing or thriving of anyone, right? Billionaires are not well. Their souls are not well. Most of them, they don't sleep. Like, they're just not well. Like, none of us are well. Impoverished people aren't well. People who can't pay their rent aren't well. Unhoused people, none of us are thriving. None of us are living the most abundant lives possible because capitalism has brainwashed our society and the world that we live in to the point that nobody's going to be okay. So I don't know what the question was, but those are the thoughts that came up for me as I was watching the video.
This is just a quick reminder that if you're not subscribed to our digital community, you're only getting half of our episodes. We record enough episodes to release one every single week, but we only release every other week because of the amount of labor that goes into releasing every single week. And to be honest, even the episodes that we do release to the general public, we don't release the pre-show. And you ask anybody in our digital community, the pre-show of each episode is an episode in and of itself. So really, if you're not subscribed to our digital community, you're getting like 25% of the podcast content that we record. So if you want to take advantage of that and you want to help support the work that we're doing in a meaningful way so we can sustain it, go ahead, hit up holysmokesmovement.com, click join our digital community, or if you want to support in another way, go ahead and pick up some of that merch. Again, just go to holysmokesmovement.com. All right, let's go ahead and get back to the conversation. Bye. You preach a little bit right there. Yeah, you preached a little bit. Yeah, this is real. Like, I again, it's like, first of all, y'all asked for this conversation. Let me start there. Y'all asked for us to talk about capitalism. And when you dig into capitalism, particularly in our context, it leads to conversations like this because this is how much influence it has on the lives that we live. And it is what people strive for to attain power and wealth, right? So we're going to get a little bit deeper into this. But first, I want to invite you to the pastor study where we can really dig into like an introduction to capitalism and Christianity. So let's go for it and see where this goes. All right, y'all. Welcome to the pastor study. Capitalism is such a big topic. Like I was saying in the pre-show, we could have a whole separate podcast, like separate from Holy Smokes, just dedicated to the topic of capitalism and Christianity and how they're connected. But I know a lot of people aren't fully clear on what capitalism is and how it works. So I want to provide some of that insight. Now, look, this is not going to be an exhaustive, like full breakdown of all of this stuff. That would just be impossible. Okay. So I'm giving you the cliff notes to this. All right. So capitalism, first of all, let's just define capitalism. This is what I want to do. I want to define capitalism. I want to contrast it with socialism. Then I want to talk about late stage capitalism, and I want to talk about the connection between late stage capitalism and Christianity. All right. That's what we're going to do during our time together over these next few minutes. So capitalism, it's an economic system. Oh yeah. And by the way, if you have questions, if you with us in a live virtual audience and I say something and it's not clear and you want me to clarify it, go ahead and put it in the comments. We're going to clarify as much of this stuff as we possibly can, because this is important information. Because again, the video we just watched is about people who are a frog hair away from the White House, right? Having access to that level of power. That's how close they are to having access to that level of power. So capitalism is an economic system. And what makes it distinct is that capitalism is an economic system where private citizens and organizations own the means of production. All right. So ideally, capitalism fosters a culture of innovation and competition. So it comes down to who can make the best products and offer the best services at the best price. Ideally, that's who wins the day. Capitalism is all about supply and demand. I want those who are with us right now to type supply and demand in the comments, because that's going to come up again later. It's very important. Capitalism is about supply and demand. If there is a demand for something in the market, anyone with the necessary resources can supply the market demands. That's capitalism. So supply and demand, individuals and private organizations own the means of production. Now, let's contrast that with another economic system. We usually hear capitalism contrasted with socialism. So let's contrast that. Socialism is an economic system where the means of production are not owned by individuals, but rather they're owned by society as a whole. And the government manages the distribution of these resources. So take, for instance, like healthcare. Our healthcare and our capitalist system is provided by private companies. Aetna, United Healthcare, Anthem, which is now Elevance, whatever your healthcare company is, it's a private company. But in a socialist economy, there aren't any private healthcare companies. The government oversees healthcare in that situation. Now, socialism can sound really scary to people because American propaganda paints socialism as the boogeyman. But I just want to tell you, some of the happiest countries in the world are socialist countries. Now, contrary to popular belief, the United States is not a pure capitalist economy. I don't know of any countries that are purely one particular economic system. We're not a pure capitalist economy. The primary economic system in the United States is capitalism, but there are socialist components. Take, for instance, my business, P Squared Custom Clothiers. It is a capitalist venture. We supply, P Squared, we supply alterations and custom clothing to our customers who pay us directly. No government entities are directly involved in these transactions. Like, that's capitalism. It's between us and our customer. Nobody else is involved. That's capitalism. That's my company, P Squared. But when the pandemic hit and nobody was buying clothes because wasn't nobody going nowhere, the PPP loan that we got from the government was socialism. So my company received government assistance to stay afloat. That's socialism. I said all of that to say that these economic systems are amoral. That means they don't have a moral stance. Capitalism is not inherently good or bad, and socialism is not inherently good or bad. But in our context, capitalism has become a cancer. And here is where the term late stage capitalism enters the chat. Late stage capitalism refers to the form of capitalism that we are currently living in right now. And I'm going to just give you 3 characteristics of late stage capitalism. Number 1, and I want you to pay attention to these characteristics and tell me if you can connect some dots to these characteristics and what we see in Christianity. Number 1, labor exploitation. In late stage capitalism, there is always labor exploitation. The working class does not make enough to secure its basic necessities. And to help clarify that point, I want to share this video from More Perfect Union. All right. If you want to check them out on Instagram, it's at Perfect Union. It's a news source for working people, for the working class. All right. And here's a video that helps us kind of crystallize this conversation about labor exploitation.
What do you think is the largest form of theft in the United States?
Probably identity. Financial.
Merchandise theft?
Corporate. Or taxes.
Tax evasion.
Yeah, I would say robbery, fraud. I'm going to say car theft.
Car theft.
So what if I told you it was wage theft?
Wage theft. Employers not paying their workers.
So it can look like a lot of things, like maybe you work overtime and so they're not paying you time and a half. They have you come 30 minutes early, but they don't pay you for the 30 minutes early, that kind of thing. It's about $50 billion annually that employers steal from workers. That's crazy. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Isn't it a lot of money? In 2019, it was estimated that the total cost of all robberies in the United States was $482 million. So the total cost of wage theft is about 100 times that. Definitely sounds like a problem.
Especially undocumented people or people that have records or, people that are blackballed, that's terrible.
All right. So wage theft is the largest form of theft in the country by far. Employers stealing money from their employees by getting them to do work that they don't pay them for or they underpay them for. So in late stage capitalism, number 1, you got labor exploitation. Another characteristic, oversized multinational corporations. When you look at our economy, like take, for instance, Meta. Meta is one of those oversized multinational corporations. Meta owns Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and WhatsApp, just for starters. All right. These corporations like Meta, Tesla, Apple, the Alphabet company, which is Google and YouTube, like they have more money than most countries. I heard an economist earlier this week say that Samsung has its own private army. Dead ass. It tripped me out when he said it. All right. So late stage capitalism, labor exploitation, oversized multinational corporations, and then number 3, a concentration of financial capital. So the majority of the financial capital is held by the top people financially in the company. So in our country, in the United States, the top 1% of people have more wealth than the bottom 50% combined. The top 1% has significantly more wealth than the bottom 50% combined. That's what late stage capitalism looks like. Now, to close this out, I just want to address one aspect of how Western Christianity is very much aligned with late stage capitalism. And I want to lift that up by talking about the teaching of tithing in many of our churches. Now, I'm not saying that tithing is bad. I'm talking about the way tithing is taught. The way tithing is taught in many of our churches is very, very capitalistic. Remember earlier, I asked you to write supply and demand in the comments. Here's where it comes back up. The way tithing is taught in many of our churches is fear-based supply and demand. The church uses fear of divine judgment to manufacture demand for divine favor. And the church convinces you that only the church can supply the divine favor that you need. So if you want to get this divine favor, you got to come through the church. So they tell you, if you don't give, God is going to curse your finances. That's divine judgment. They tell you that if you don't give, God is going to curse your finances, divine judgment. But if you want God to bless your finances, divine favor, you need to give at least 10% of your money to the church. It is purely transactional, and it's rooted in fear, and it prioritizes the institution over the people. Now, when you compare that to our jobs, many of us have the same relationship with our jobs. We stay at the job out of fear that we won't be able to live without the job. Not because we love the job so much, not because we appreciate being here. We just know we can't survive if we don't have this job. So we get exploited on our jobs the same way many of us are exploited by our churches. Let me end by saying this. Capitalism is not the problem. Christianity is not the problem. Greed is the problem. Any economic system controlled by greedy people will become oppressive to the masses. If greedy people lead a capitalist economy, it's going to impoverish the people. If greedy people lead a society, a socialist economy, that brand of socialism will impoverish the people. That's as good as I can do of an introduction without going too deep into all of this stuff. But I really hope it was helpful to just kind of clarify what we're talking about here. So thank y'all for joining me in the Pastor Study. All right. So that was a lot. I want to know, like, what came up for y'all during that segment.
You want us to just choose one thing that came up?
I mean, anything. What's the primary thing that came up? There was a lot. Look, like I said, capitalism is such a big topic. It's like, where do I start? I get it. I expect when I ask these questions, there are going to be long pauses. It's like, where do I start? Yeah, like what aspect of that brings up the most for you, T?
So the part that brings up the most for me is wage theft. And so I think about it from the perspective of someone who is in ministry and who does work as like startup organizations or very small organizations who have limited capital, limited resources, all these things, right? So like piecing together this career where I have the privilege of working at organizations that I really believe in and that I really like, am appreciative of the mission, blah, blah, blah. And you contrast that with corporations like Apple and Amazon and Meta and all these things who are hoarding resources to the extent that, like you said, they have more money than some small countries. And so the dichotomy of what it looks like to do ministry work in late stage capitalism alongside these technology companies that have this plethora of money, it's like it's a mind fuck, if for a lack of a better word, because yes, I am grateful that I get to do this work and that I get to work at places whose missions and visions I believe in, but also healthcare would be nice, but I don't want to go work somewhere that I think is morally or ethically compromised for the sake of having healthcare and benefits and having supervisors that, don't mean me well or might mean me harm, or I'm scared I'm gonna get fired tomorrow because life happened and I got a flat tire, or I had to take a sick day, or somebody gave me a performance review that was rooted in woo 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 and blah blah blah. And so there's this dichotomy of what it looks like to think about wage theft when you want to quote unquote do the work of the Lord or work in these contexts, and you have all this other stuff that's happening over here. So it's just so many things.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And these big corporations, like you said, they hoard resources.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, like Nikki was talking about earlier, is very insidious because they'll present certain programs like it's good for people. Like I recently saw that Amazon was looking at creating housing for their employees. And immediately my mind went to sharecropping. Immediately my mind went to sharecropping, because that's what sharecropping was. We're only going to pay you enough to live on this property, and you're going to be completely dependent on us. So the money that you make, you then got to turn around and spend it with us. That is sharecropping to the T. And yeah, like that's real. Nikki, what's up? You seem like you have something to say.
Okay, so the first thing I thought when you were done was, damn, you did your work. Because to be able to put it so concisely in a way that was digestible, props, sir. That was quite impressive.
I went to Maccabee School of Theology.
Yeah, you did. Absolutely. I'll say you earned your paycheck this week, y'all. Make sure your Patreon gets in. No, that was fantastic. And yeah, I think it's I always get so caught up on that over centralization of wealth. Just have you seen the rice comparison where somebody put like, okay, here's a grain of rice and here's 100 grains of rice. Here's 1,000,000 grains of rice, which was big. But then here is 1 trillion or 1 billion grains of rice. And it was unfathomable. And so it was just, I could not comprehend it at all. And you hear that when people get power and when they get funds like that, like it literally changes their brain. Like there is something psychological that happens. But like I feel like I can't even begin to understand how that happens because it's just so mammoth. And I cannot understand. Like this might be so very naive of me, but I cannot understand that kind of greed. Like I just do not understand how you can look at a world that is hurting in so many ways and have the means and the resources to make a significant and real difference. And not at least try. And I know that probably makes me sound very naive, but I don't even have hooks for it.
No, I feel you.
It's just I don't know how you have that much money.
And the goal is to just keep having that much
and to
money.
Just keep getting more. What are you doing with it?
Yeah.
That's the thing I was going to say. What you said, Tierney, the thing to keep getting more, you can't convince me that hoarding doesn't spill over into finances. You can't convince me that it doesn't. You can't convince me that people don't hoard money. People hoard money. Yes. I remember my grandmother and my aunts that were like super older, my daddy's older sisters, and my daddy will be 70 next year. So his older sisters would like keep money in all of these spots. And I'm not saying that for an emergency, that's not a good thing to do. I know that you should have money that you can get to if you need it. But underneath a lot of that was hoarding tendencies. Mm-hmm. It was hoarding tendencies. And I don't think that greediness isn't associated with hoarding. I really do believe that they're closely associated, because when you hoard, it's not that you need the things that you're keeping. You have some type of attachment to them. You put some type of value that's unrealistic on them. You know, even the sentimental value that we put on some stuff can get out of control. So I really believe that some of this greediness is just about hoarding. It's hoarding behavior.
And isn't hoarding like a sign of a mental illness?
To us, like once it gets over a certain level.
Yeah, like eventually. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I don't want to say everybody that's greedy got a mental illness. I'm just saying. I'm just saying what I'm saying. Okay. Hoarding is a thing, and hoarding can get to a place where it's unhealthy. And a lot of times when it gets to that healthy place, like Tierney said, it's because of a mental illness. So if we're going to connect all the dots, there may be some mentally unwell, greedy people. And is all I'm saying.
That's where I wanted to go. So I was having a conversation about, like, not exactly this topic, but in a similar arena. When you get to a certain level of power or authority or access, I think that there is something that happens in your brain to where your ethics and your morals find a line that they cross and they are no longer real. Because once you realize that you can have that certain level of power or you can have that certain level of money, it's like, okay, the things I used to care about in ethics and morals and finding lines that cannot be crossed no longer exist, because I know that I have gotten over that to a certain extent where they're not real anymore, because I can get whatever I want. I can buy myself into whatever I want. I can access myself into whatever I want. I can control myself into whatever I want. And so therefore, all those things no longer matter. And so when you have people in positions of power who run your capitalistic society, that is how you get late stage capitalism, because nobody was there to tell you no. And if there was anyone there who thought to tell you no, you fired them. You got rid of them. You made their car burn up. You made sure something happened to them to where they no longer exist. And so you have there are no checks and balances at this point, to where it's like we get to late stage capitalism.
Ooh. Yes.
It's the mindset of that don't apply to me. That's for y'all. That ain't for me.
Yeah.
And I know we're not talking about consent here, and like we're talking about capitalism, but it's like across the board, right? So if you think about people in positions of power across multiple spectrums, when you have this certain level of power or authority or control or access, the lines are blurred. There is no line. I get whatever I want. You can't tell me no.
Right.
And I also believe that power hungry mindset and that idea of capitalism and the framework of capitalism is a setup for racism. You can slide from one right into the other. Depending on what you think about certain populations, you can slide right into your bigotedness. You can slide right into being prejudiced. You can slide right into being racist, because you will connect what you think about people. You will connect that to your judgment of how they work, how they earn money, how they take care of themselves, without considering the system that's over them, that determines how they operate. It's easy for you to be a racist when you're looking at it from that perspective, and you already have some strong biases about a certain group of people.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like when I was in seminary and became conscious of capitalism, that was when I started learning more about how some of my heroes have spoken directly to capitalism. So, take for instance, I grew up a Baptist preacher's kid. So Martin Luther King was always talked about in my context. And Martin Luther King was quoted as saying, after achieving integration, he said, "I think we've integrated into a burning house." This is Martin Luther King's words. "I believe we've integrated into a burning house." And the context of him saying that is because this country does not care about impoverished people. It doesn't matter what color you are. So he turned his attention to economic justice. And that's what got him assassinated. King didn't get assassinated for having a dream. He didn't get assassinated for the bus boycott. He got assassinated on the heels of him turning his attention to economic justice.
Yep.
And saying, we coming to DC for this next march because we coming to get our check.
Right.
And when greedy people are in control, they'll do whatever they can to hold on to that. I saw a post recently. Somebody said, and I just totally agree with the post. He said, I really don't believe in being a billionaire, because in order to become a billionaire, you got to step on bodies.
We don't need no billionaires.
You got to exploit the hell out of it.
Yeah.
In order to become a billionaire. I don't care who you are. I know we all love Beyonce and Jay-Z. They done had to step on some bodies, I believe, to become billionaires. They done had to exploit some people along the way to becoming a billionaire. Because when you think about the amount of money $1 billion is, like all of us can't possibly imagine just making $1 million a year for our whole life. Can you imagine if you made $1 million a year every single year? Let's
if
say
I made $1 million a year every single year, you would not see me here today. Okay,
baby, I was about to say, I wouldn't even be here. I wouldn't even be here. What?
Now,
not know my name.
Now imagine if you made $1 million a year every year of your life and you lived for 100 years. It would take you 10 lifetimes of $1 million a year just to get to 1 billion. Like that's and we got people living on the streets. But capitalism tells us they're on the streets because of something they did. They're on the streets because they didn't work hard enough. That's one of those capitalistic Christian things that get reinforced. You just got to work hard. If you have the opportunity, go look up the Protestant work ethic, and you'll probably understand how we get to where we are when you understand the Protestant work ethic. But a minute ago, I think Nikki was going to say something, and I just jumped in and started taking off. Were you going to say something, Nikki?
No, I was just agreeing with everything. I just was.
I understand. Mm-hmm. So, like, do y'all see any connections, like strong connections between this late stage capitalism and Christianity? Like, I mentioned the tithing piece earlier. Where do y'all see capitalism connected to Christianity?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is one of my favorite movies is the Jim and Tammy Faye Baker documentary where, you know, the actors portray them. That was the first time. And I was a kid who grew up in the 80s. So I saw Jim and Tammy Faye in real time on TV in the 80s. But I didn't understand the conglomerate that they had turned church into. Like, I thought it was just televangelism. You call in, you get the prayer. I didn't know until seeing documentaries that they made every single thing about making money. And I don't have an issue with people having, revenue generating ideas. The issue that I have is that when you get people to do these jobs that help generate revenue, are you paying them fairly according to the revenue that they help generate? So it was like seeing this documentary and realizing that, oh, televangelism isn't just, you get on TV and people call in. It's a whole like mega business. Joel Osteen has a mega business. TD Jakes has a mega business. And I don't have issues with the mega business. What I will have issues with is finding out that people that help run the business, the IT guy, the administrative assistant, the person that sweeps and cleans emails, that they aren't able to keep a roof over their head or fill their car with gas. Like that's the thing that pops out to me.
It's the exploitation. It's so much the exploitation at every single like level. People are being exploited, and that's one of the things that like has been really important to me. I don't have an issue with wealth. I hope to be wealthy one day, but I don't plan to exploit anybody to attain whatever wealth I am able to attain. If I got to exploit somebody, then it ain't worth it. If I got to take advantage of somebody, then it ain't worth it, because I care more about humanity than I care about having wealth. And that's probably the reason I'm not wealthy now, because I refuse to take advantage of people. If I'm gonna be perfectly honest, the track that was set for me in the fundamentalist church, I probably would be doing really well right now. But it's like, I don't want to take advantage of people like that. I don't want to lie to people in the pulpit so I can keep my check. So I'll take the risk of telling the truth and see if I can make it.
So when I think about what Christianity and capitalism have in common, I think they both lost the plot of the movie. Like, if we think about what the purpose of Christianity is and what it means to be followers of the way of Jesus, these big buildings where we spend more time trying to make the budget, to keep the lights on, and to do this performative work than we do to actually care for humanity has lost the plot of the movie. The same way, like Christian said earlier, capitalism at its core is not inherently evil or inherently good. But when you put greedy people in positions of power to make decisions, that's how you end up with late stage capitalism. That's how you lose the plot of the movie. Supply and demand is not necessarily a bad thing. But if you talk about you want electronic stickers at the grocery store so that you can price gouge water and ice cream when it's hot outside, we've lost the plot of the movie. And so when you think about the intention versus the reality, we are just completely off course from what it is that was set out. Well, what the people said they set out to do. Now, I have questions and thoughts about people's intentions versus, like, what people say their intentions are versus what their real intentions are. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. But what y'all said the plot of the movie was, we are so far removed from that in both instances. That's what's coming up for me.
Yeah. Western Christianity looks nothing like Jesus.
No, not at all.
Like, have y'all read what Jesus said and did? Like, in real life, have y'all actually sat down and read it? Because, like, Tim Whitaker, the New Evangelicals, always talks about the fact that, like, we got here because we took y'all seriously. You told us we should be like Jesus. So we went and read who Jesus was and was like, wait a minute, what I'm reading doesn't align with what you teaching me.
That part.
So yeah. it's like it gives Jesus a bad rap because people who've never actually encountered the historical Jesus and have only encountered the misrepresentation of him, then they assume Jesus ain't shit either. And I can't be mad at them. If everybody who they know that represent Jesus ain't shit, I would assume Jesus ain't shit either.
Right.
Yeah. Nikki, do you see any connections between Christianity and capitalism?
So when I think about capitalism, I think that at the end of the day, any good that it might provide, and like you said, it's neither it's neutral, right? But any good that it could provide is outweighed for me by the need it has to drive itself. Let me move back to Christianity. So Christianity, I often think, went awry in the 4th century when it was made legal. So originally Christianity was belonged to people who were on the margins, people who did not. They were the bottom 50%, probably the bottom 10%, to be honest. And And that's who it belonged to. That's who it was for. Christianity was there to give hope to people who were in a hopeless situation. And then some dumbass came along and made it legal.
Constantine,
4th century. And from that point on, Christianity has been in bed with the government.
Mm-hmm.
And that has destroyed it, because when you get in bed with the government, you get in bed with the economic system also.
Yes.
Like, it is impossible. So whatever the economic system is of the government, that's what the church is going to mimic. And so as we have landed ourselves in late stage capitalism, and Christianity is the majority, however you want to look at it, it has the biggest microphone, it has the most money, and it has the biggest power connections. It is in late stage capitalism also. Christianity, there are some places that have some Christian groups or organizations that have access to tons of money and tons of power. There's a centralization of it somewhere. And then there are so many churches who are just struggling. But all of our churches most of our churches are bound to buildings and financial responsibilities that they increasingly are unable to keep up with, because we no longer are trusted by the people who come to us. And so they don't give their money the way that they used to give their money. And that's the problem. I didn't know I was going to have all this, so I'm going to close it up here because it feels like it's getting there. But that's how these two things, capitalism and Christianity, when they get in bed with one another, they push each other to their limits. And that's when it becomes so incredibly perverse and harmful, and a perversion of what it was intended to be.
Absolutely. When a religion gets in bed with the empire, the empire does not take on the characteristics of the religion.
That's
the
right.
religion takes on the characteristics of the empire.
Yes.
And that's what happened to Christianity.
Yep.
Christianity took on the characteristics of the empire because it just shape-shifted.
Yep.
Whatever we have to do to get this power, we're going to, particularly in early Christianity, because think about like what that does. Like Tierney was talking earlier about what it does to people mentally.
Right.
Think about being the persecuted religion. Like all you know is persecution in your religion. And then somebody comes to power and says, "Oh, I'm gonna make you the preferred religion."
They validate you.
And here's what I need you to do for me in order to get that.
And let me tell you how I'm going to have get back in my soul, okay? Because I'm going to have some get back in me. Please believe it.
Yeah, it's real. It's
yeah.
real.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so I think it's time to kind of go to a close and just share final thoughts. What would you want to leave with people? We've been here recording now for 2 hours and 41 minutes. We've talked about so much. What would you leave with people in this conversation? And I'll just say this. I want to encourage people for real, like build community where you are. Get to know the people around you. Because whatever change we are going to affect in the world around us, it starts in our immediate vicinity. It starts with the people that we know, the people that we talk to. Like, get to know your neighbors. Find out their name. Build community where you are. Because our digital community is very much dependent on the multinational corporations that we're talking about right now. Y'all would know about TFC if it wasn't for Meta and TikTok. So if our goal is to create a world where we're not completely dependent on these things, Like, we got to have community with people around us. So I just want to encourage everybody, like, get to know the people around you, build community with people around you, have some people in your neighborhood, in your city that you know by name and they know you by name. Because I believe that community aspect is important regardless of where it goes from here. You need to know some people around you where you don't have to get on the internet to talk to them, but you can go knock on their door and be like, yo, like that's what I would say. Pamela T, Nikki, what do you want to leave?
The thing that comes to mind for me is greatest commandment. You know, when we talk about loving your neighbor as yourself, you know, and I say that in the realm of love, real, genuine, healthy love. If that's what you have for yourself, you will have the same for your neighbor. And then we don't have to worry about exploitation. We don't have to worry about manipulation. We don't have to worry about your amount of labor that you put out not being able to sustain you and where you live and how you eat. If we love our neighbors like we love ourselves, if there's a healthy love, then we don't have to worry about that. So that's where I land with it.
Most def. T, what about you?
So at my core, I am an abolitionist girly. Burn it down, start it over. We don't need these things. And so as I wrestle with that and the current reality that we live in, the NAP ministry is helpful for me by taking a break to, you know, sit down and imagine the world that I would like to live in, right? What does that world look like? How do I do the work to co-create that world with the people who I do life and community with? And I've been reading Plenty Good Room by Andrew Wilkes. And it's been really helpful for me as I think about what I want to see out of a future or what I think the world could be once we abolish it and burn it down. Because I am, you know, that's very much my vibe, and thinking a little bit more about what Black Christian socialism could look like. If we are, if we're in a world that looks a little bit more like what I think the world Jesus would want us to live in looks like. So those are two things that have been helpful for me, just acknowledging, you know, we're all in different places. I'm not saying you need to be a burn it down girly. That doesn't have to be your vibe. That's just my vibe. So if your vibe is similar to my vibe, but those things might be helpful to you as they're helpful to me. So that's all I got.
Can I be a burn it down girly too, or is that
No, you want to be wealthy, right? Like we debate about this all the time.
Yeah. I want to have different problems in life. I keep saying that all the time. Like, I want to have problems that aren't tied to not having enough money to do shit.
Yeah.
Listen, and I believe that comes from what you come from. So if you come from a place of struggle, what you look forward to is not having to struggle. If you come from a place of everything is taken care of, what you look for is how to disrupt the system or change things and still be taken care of. And I think there's room for all of it. Like, I want to be wealthy too, because I come from a place where the rain came through my roof onto my bed. Like, so yeah, like I need that in my life. Like nails and all and hair and all those things. Like, can I get some money so I can have a different set of products? So, you know, I ain't got to worry about the roof and the lights and the groceries. Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's real. Yeah. Nikki, what about you?
Love y'all, love y'all, and I miss you so much. This has been so good for my soul. Okay, so when burning it down starts, I am going to join you, but I am also a pragmatist at heart, and so yes to everything everyone has said, and in the midst of it. When you pick up your Apple phone to go and scroll, or when you have to go to Walmart and not to that bougie store that you think isn't connected to some big conglomeration. Don't worry, it really is.
Right.
Give yourself grace. We are in the soup, and that's just the reality. We are participants in late stage capitalism.
Oh, yeah.
And have grace for yourself. Because when you can have grace for yourself in the midst of that, you can have grace for others. And so do what you have to do for yourself. If it's get the nails and get the hair, and for me, it's super comfy bed stuff. Like I just really need all of the bougie stuff on my bed to feel like I am a princess. And so like whatever that is for you, just dive in and do it, because this is the world that we live in. But Jesus said to his disciples when he sent them out, I'm sending you out like a sheep among wolves. And so be shrewd as snakes and innocent as doves. We live in a effed up society. I do have a bigger job now, y'all. Sorry.
Yeah. You got
So we live in a society that is, God, broken in so many ways. And there's no way for that brokenness to not impact us. But it also doesn't have to steal who we are. And it doesn't have to take the goodness that is within us. And it doesn't have to take our desire to have good for our neighbor from us either. And so we can be shrewd as snakes, and good gosh, get your message out there on TikTok, because we need to hear it. But we can also come home and cook ourselves a home cooked meal and hug the people that we love, and know that at the end of the day is what matters.
How appropriate. How appropriate. Thank you, Nikki, for anchoring us as we close. This can go in so many different directions, and I just think we all have to decide which direction we want to go in to, maintain a sense of peace at the end of the day. So this has been like an introduction to Christianity and capitalism. It could go so much further than this, but I hope it's been helpful to at least get you started if you haven't really thought about this in a lot of detail. We'll be back next time, right here, deconstructing harmful theology and building beloved community one cigar at a time. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.